The crystal chandeliers scattered prisms across the marble floor, each light fragment a tiny star in this galaxy of wealth I didn't belong in. My black cocktail dress, the only decent thing in my wardrobe, felt suddenly cheap against my skin, the polyester blend an imposter among silks and cashmeres. I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, my fingers trembling slightly as I clutched my champagne flute, the bubbles inside more confident than I could ever be. "Smile," Lisa whispered beside me, her elbow gently nudging my ribs. These people can smell fear. My childhood friend had dragged me here as her +1, insisting I needed to network after losing my job at the downtown cafe last week. What she really meant was that I needed to find a rich husband, or at least a generous lover, to solve my mounting debt problems. "I don't belong here," I murmured, taking a sip of champagne that cost more than my monthly rent. The liquid was crisp, almost bitter against my tongue, like the reality of my circumstances. "Nobody knows that except you," Lisa replied, her eyes scanning the room hungrily. She'd always been beautiful in that effortless way. Golden hair, blue eyes, and the kind of confidence that money buys. "Besides, Stella, you look gorgeous tonight. That dress makes your eyes look like emeralds." I forced a smile, knowing she meant well. The gala fundraiser was being held in one of Boston's oldest hotels, a place where old money and new ambitions collided in a symphony of quiet deals and loud laughter. I'd spent hours researching proper etiquette just to avoid embarrassing myself, yet I still felt like an anthropologist observing a foreign culture. That's when I first felt it, the weight of someone's gaze burning into my skin. I turned slowly, my body responding before my mind could catch up. Across the room, partially hidden by a cluster of laughing men in tuxedos, stood someone who didn't quite fit despite his obvious wealth. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't even pretending to smile. Instead, his dark eyes were fixed on me with an intensity that made my champagne taste suddenly sour. "Who is that?" I asked Lisa, trying to sound casual while my heart inexplicably thundered against my ribs. She followed my gaze and her posture instantly changed, straightening, tightening, a prey animal sensing danger. "That's Adriano Russo," she whispered, her voice dropping so low I barely heard her over the string quartet. "Don't stare. Don't even look." "Why? Who is he?" But even as I asked, something primitive inside me already knew the answer. The man radiated danger like heat from a flame. "He owns half the waterfront officially. Unofficially." Lisa shook her head slightly. "Old Italian family. They call him the Prince, because he took over everything when his father disappeared 3 years ago. Nobody asked questions about what happened to Senior." My eyes betrayed me, drawn back to him like a magnet finding north. He was younger than I expected for someone with such a reputation, early 30s perhaps, and undeniably handsome in that sharp, threatening way of a predator. His suit wasn't flashy like the tech millionaires preening around us, but I could tell from its perfect fit that it cost more than everything I owned. 2 broad-shouldered men hovered near him, their eyes constantly scanning the room while pretending to enjoy the party. "He's looking at you," Lisa hissed, suddenly gripping my arm. "Why is he looking at you?" "I don't know," I whispered back, a strange heat crawling up my neck. "I've never seen him before." "Well, he's coming over. I'm getting another drink." Lisa's loyalty evaporated as quickly as she did, leaving me alone as the crowd parted like the Red Sea before Adriano Russo's purposeful stride. I looked for an escape route, but my body refused to move, trapped in the amber of his attention. Up close, I could smell his cologne, something expensive and earthy that made me think of forests after rain. A thin scar traced the edge of his jaw, the only flaw in his otherwise perfect features. His eyes were darker than they'd appeared from across the room, not brown, but nearly black, revealing nothing while taking everything in. "You're not enjoying yourself," he said. Not a question, but a statement of fact, in a voice accented just enough to remind me he came from somewhere else originally. Italy, I assumed from what Lisa had said. "I'm fine. Thank you," I replied automatically. The social script for women approached by powerful men ingrained since childhood. Be polite. Don't offend. Find the quickest exit. You're lying. His mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. You've been checking the exit every 30 seconds since you arrived. The observation unsettled me. I didn't realize I was being watched. Everyone's being watched, just not with the same interest. He took a champagne flute from a passing waiter without taking his eyes off me. You don't know who I am. Again, not a question. I hesitated, caught between honesty and self-preservation. I was just told. He nodded slightly. And now you're afraid. Should I be? The words escaped before I could stop them, and I immediately regretted the boldness born from my nervousness. Instead of anger, amusement flickered across his face, softening its hard edges momentarily. Most people are. You're Stella? The fact that he knew my first name sent alarm bells ringing through my mind. How do you... I make it my business to know who attends these events, he interrupted smoothly, especially when they're as out of place as you are. I'm sorry if I'm not meeting the dress code, I replied, embarrassment and defiance warring within me. That's not what I meant. He stepped closer, and I resisted the urge to step back. You're not calculating the net worth of everyone you speak to. Your smile earlier, the only genuine one I've seen tonight, was for the elderly coat check attendant, not for anyone who could advance your social standing. I swallowed hard, unnerved by his observations. I should find my friend. She's at the bar, flirting with Senator Williams' son. He's engaged to the Thompson heiress. But I doubt that concerns her. His words were delivered without judgment, merely stating facts. You don't know anything about her, I defended weakly, though part of me wondered if he was right. I know everything about everyone in this room. It's how I stay alive. He offered his hand suddenly. Dance with me. It wasn't a request so much as a foregone conclusion. Every instinct told me to refuse, to mumble an excuse and flee. Yet beneath the fear bubbled something darker and more dangerous, curiosity. I'm not a very good dancer, I admitted, staring at his outstretched hand. I am. The simple confidence in those two words pulled at something deep within me. I placed my hand in his, and his fingers closed around mine with surprising gentleness. The contrast between his touch and the power he exuded made me shiver slightly. He guided me toward the dance floor where couples swayed to a waltz I didn't recognize. One of his guards, because that's what they were, I realized, not friends or associates, moved to follow, but Adriano dismissed him with a slight shake of his head. His hand settled at the small of my back, warm through the thin fabric of my dress. Follow my lead, he murmured close to my ear, his breath stirring loose strands of my hair. And I did. For someone with his imposing presence, he moved with unexpected grace, guiding me effortlessly across the floor. I felt the stares around us, the whispers behind manicured hands, the sudden attention of a room full of people who'd previously looked through me as if I were glass. They're wondering who you are, he said, reading my thoughts with unsettling accuracy. And what are you telling them? I asked, finding my voice again. His lips brushed against my temple, not quite a kiss. That's entirely up to you. The cryptic response hung between us as the music swelled. His thumb traced small circles against the bare skin of my back, each touch sending electric currents up my spine. I should go, I said after the song ended, reality intruding on whatever strange spell had momentarily captured me. You haven't told me why you're here. His hand remained on my back, guiding me toward the terrace doors instead of returning to the main room. My friend Lisa invited me. I glanced back, searching for her familiar blonde head in the crowd, but she was nowhere to be seen. Lisa Montgomery doesn't do anything without ulterior motives. The casual way he dismissed my only friend here sent a chill through me. Outside, the night air was crisp with early autumn, the garden below twinkling with strategic lighting that made the manicured hedges look like something from a fairy tale. Boston's skyline glittered beyond, reminding me how far I was from my tiny apartment in Dorchester. Do you know Lisa well? I asked, wrapping my arms around myself against the chill. Before he could answer, he was shrugging out of his jacket and placing it over my shoulders in one fluid motion. The weight of it, the residual warmth, the scent of him enveloping me, it was all overwhelmingly intimate. Thank you, I murmured, clutching the edges of the expensive fabric. I know her father's gambling debts, Adriano replied, answering my earlier question. I know he borrowed money from people he shouldn't have. I know he's desperate to marry her off to someone wealthy enough to solve his problems. I stared at him, the implications slowly dawning. And you think she brought me here as… What? A distraction? His expression hardened slightly. I think Montgomery would sell his own daughter to keep his kneecaps intact. Bringing your beautiful friend as bait for his creditors would be nothing to him. That's a horrible thing to say. The truth often is. He leaned against the stone balustrade, studying me. Why did you really come tonight, Stella? I told you. Lisa invited… The real reason. His tone brooked no evasion. I sighed, suddenly tired of pretending. I needed a night away from reality, from past due notices and job rejections and wondering how I'm going to make rent next month. I shook my head, embarrassed by my honesty. Stupid, right? Thinking I could escape my problems by playing dress-up for one night. Something shifted in his expression. A softening around the eyes, perhaps. Not stupid. Human. A comfortable silence settled between us as we looked out over the garden. The string quartet's music drifted faintly from inside, a soundtrack to a moment that felt increasingly surreal. Come with me, he said suddenly, straightening up. Where? Somewhere more interesting than this charity facade. He offered his hand again, and I hesitated longer this time. I don't even know you. You know exactly who I am, he countered. Your friend made sure of that. The question is whether you'll let fear make your decisions tonight, or curiosity. It was a challenge wrapped in velvet, and despite everything I knew about self-preservation, I found myself placing my hand in his once more. He led me down a different set of stairs than the ones we'd come up, away from the main party, and through a service corridor where staff in black and white uniforms stepped aside, eyes downcast as we passed. No one questioned him or asked for identification. It was as if the building itself recognized his authority. Should I be worried about where you're taking me? I asked, only half joking. Yes, he replied simply, and the honesty startled a laugh from me. We emerged into what appeared to be a private bar area, much smaller and more intimate than the main ballroom. Only about a dozen people occupied the space, all men except for 2 women draped in diamonds who looked bored with their companions. The room fell silent as we entered, all eyes turning to Adriano, and then, with undisguised curiosity, to me. Boss, one man acknowledged, rising slightly from his seat until Adriano waved him back down. He guided me to a corner booth, his hand never leaving the small of my back. The possessive gesture wasn't lost on the room's occupants, whose expressions ranged from surprise to calculation to barely concealed envy. Whiskey, he told the bartender who appeared instantly at our table. And for the lady? Just water, please, I said, aware that I needed my wits about me. Bring the Macallan 25, Adriano amended, dismissing the bartender with a nod. As the man hurried away, I became acutely conscious of my surroundings. The subtle power dynamics playing out around us, the deference shown to Adriano, the assessing looks directed at me. These are your colleagues? I asked carefully. Some business associates, some enemies pretending to be friends. His casual honesty was disarming. None worth introducing to you. The drinks arrived with remarkable speed. The amber liquid in Adriano's crystal tumbler caught the light as he raised it slightly in my direction before taking a sip. I watched his throat work as he swallowed, aware that my fascination with him was growing more dangerous by the minute. Do you make a habit of this? I asked, taking a sip of water. Rescuing women from boring parties? I've never done this before, he said, his intensity returning full force, which is why they're all watching. They're wondering what makes you special. I glanced around and found he was right. Eyes darted away as my gaze met theirs. And what does make me special? I asked, genuinely curious. Before he could answer, a commotion at the entrance drew our attention. Lisa stumbled in, clearly having had more champagne since I'd last seen her. She was clutching the arm of a young man I didn't recognize, her laughter too loud for the subdued atmosphere. Her eyes widened when she spotted me. Stella! There you are! I've been looking everywhere! She started toward our table, but the young man pulled her back, whispering urgently in her ear as he stared at Adriano with naked fear. Adriano didn't acknowledge them, instead turning his attention fully back to me. An old friend of yours. Since elementary school, I admitted. Though sometimes I wonder if we've grown too far apart. People reveal their true nature under pressure, he said, watching as Lisa and her companion retreated hastily from the room. You learn quickly who stands beside you and who runs. The words hit closer to home than he could know. My ex-boyfriend had vanished the moment I'd lost my job, and my mother had stopped answering my calls when I couldn't lend her money anymore. Loyalty had proven a rare commodity in my life. Is that what you're doing? I asked boldly. Putting pressure on me to see my true nature? A genuine smile crossed his face, transforming his features from handsome to breathtaking. Perhaps I'm allowing you to see mine. The room seemed to recede around us, the background noise fading as our conversation intensified. He asked about my life, real questions that required real answers. Where I'd grown up, a small town outside Pittsburgh, what I'd studied, English literature, what I'd wanted to be, a writer once upon a time before pragmatism set in. In turn, I learned fragments about him. His love of sailing, his collection of rare first editions, his preference for silence over small talk. It was during a lull in our conversation that I noticed a man approaching our table. Tall, gray-haired, with the confident stride of someone used to deference. Russo, the man acknowledged with a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. What a surprise finding you here. Judge Calloway. Adriano didn't stand or offer his hand. I wasn't aware you frequented establishments like this. Special occasion. The judge's gaze slid to me, assessing and dismissive in the same look. Aren't you going to introduce me to your friend? Something dangerous flashed in Adriano's eyes. There and gone so quickly I might have imagined it. No. The simplicity of his refusal hung in the air between them, a challenge neither man seemed willing to escalate further. The judge's face flushed slightly before he nodded stiffly and continued to the bar. That was rude, I whispered, though part of me was oddly thrilled by his protective response. He doesn't deserve to know your name. Adriano's voice was low, almost a growl. He leaned closer, his lips nearly brushing my ear. Let them watch, he whispered, his breath warm against my skin. They'll learn you belong to me. The possessive declaration should have sent me running. Instead, I felt a treacherous heat bloom in my chest, spreading outward until my whole body hummed with it. I didn't belong to anyone, had prided myself on my independence even when it meant struggling alone. Yet something in his words called to a part of me I hadn't known existed until this moment. I pulled back slightly to look at him, searching for any sign that this was a game or a power play. What I found in his eyes was something altogether more frightening: sincerity. You don't even know me, I said, my voice barely audible. I know enough. His hand found mine under the table, his thumb tracing the delicate bones of my wrist. And I want to know more. It was then that I made my first mistake. I smiled at him, genuine and unguarded. The answering heat in his eyes told me he recognized it for what it was. Not submission, but permission to continue this dangerous dance we'd begun. I never saw the flash of the camera from across the room, never noticed the figure slipping out with evidence of my fatal error. By the time I would understand the consequences of that single unguarded moment, it would be far too late to escape the web I had wandered into so willingly. The night air carried the scent of possibility, as Adriano guided me out of the hotel through a side entrance I hadn't known existed. His security detail materialized from the shadows, 2 men in front, 1 behind, moving with practiced precision. The sudden appearance of armed guards should have shattered whatever spell I was under, but instead, it only heightened the surreal quality of the evening. Where are we going? I asked, as a sleek black Bentley pulled up to the curb. The driver emerged silently, opening the rear door with a slight bow toward Adriano. To dinner, he replied simply, his hand on my lower back as he guided me into the vehicle. Unless you're not hungry? My stomach answered for me with an embarrassing growl. I hadn't eaten since lunch, a sad peanut butter sandwich at my kitchen counter. Too nervous about the gala to manage anything else. I'll take that as a yes, Adriano said, his lips quirking into that almost smile that made my pulse quicken. The interior of the car was all buttery leather and polished wood, the partition between us and the driver already raised for privacy. As we pulled away from the curb, I realized I was still wearing his jacket, the expensive fabric pooling around me like a shield. "I should give this back," I said, starting to shrug it off. "Keep it." His eyes tracked the movement, something possessive in his gaze. "It suits you." I settled back, letting his scent envelop me. "You do this often? Whisk women away from parties to mysterious destinations?" "You're still afraid of me." Not answering my question, but making an observation. "I'm cautious," I corrected. "There's a difference." He leaned back against the leather seat, studying me in the dim glow from passing streetlights. "Tell me something true, Stella. Something you've never told anyone." The request was so unexpected that I laughed nervously. That's quite a demand from someone I just met. "We're beyond social conventions, don't you think?" He gestured to the car, to the night around us, to the improbable reality of me sitting beside him. "Give me something real." I considered deflecting again, but found myself wanting to answer honestly. "I'm terrified of ending up like my mother," I said finally. Alone at 60, working 2 jobs to make ends meet, wondering where her life went wrong. The admission hung in the air between us, more revealing than I'd intended. "What happened to her dreams?" he asked, his voice gentler than I'd heard it before. "She put them aside for a man who didn't deserve her." I twisted my hands in my lap. "He left when I was 7. She never recovered. Not her heart, not her finances." Adriano was quiet for a moment, absorbing this. "And that's why you guard your independence so fiercely." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. "Your turn. Something true." I expected resistance, but he answered immediately. "I never wanted this life, my father's empire, the family business." His gaze turned to the window, his reflection ghostly against the glass. "I studied architecture in Milan. I wanted to build things that would last centuries." "What happened?" "My father was murdered by his oldest friend." The bluntness of his statement stole my breath. "I came home for the funeral and never left. Some choices aren't really choices." The car slowed, turning into a narrow alley behind what appeared to be a restaurant. The driver opened Adriano's door first, then circled to my side. As I stepped out, I realized we were in the North End, Boston's Italian district. "My grandfather opened this place in 1956, Adriano explained, guiding me toward a nondescript door with no sign or marking. "It's not in any guidebooks." Inside, the restaurant was a time capsule. Red leather booths, white tablecloths, candles flickering in amber glass holders. A silver-haired man rushed forward, embracing Adriano with obvious affection. "Adriano, è passato troppo tempo." The older man stepped back, his eyes widening as they fell on me. "E chi è questa bella signorina?" "Uncle Marco, this is Stella," Adriano said, his hand finding the small of my back again. "Stella, my godfather and the best chef in Boston." Marco's weathered face split into a broad smile as he kissed both my cheeks. "Any friend of Adriano's is family here." He lowered his voice conspiratorially. "He never brings women to my restaurant. You must be special." I felt heat creep up my neck. "It's lovely to meet you." Marco led us to a secluded corner booth, shooing away the menus a waiter tried to bring. "I will take care of everything," he insisted before disappearing into the kitchen. The restaurant was half full, couples lingering over wine, a family celebrating at a large round table, a few solitary diners at the bar. None of them paid us any attention, though I noticed Adriano's security had taken up positions at strategic points around the room. "Your godfather seems nice," I said, unfolding the heavy linen napkin across my lap. "He helped raise me after my mother died." Adriano accepted a bottle of wine from a sommelier who appeared and vanished with silent efficiency. "Cancer, when I was 12. Marco was the one who taught me to sail, to cook, to appreciate books beyond their covers. The wine, a rich red that tasted of cherries and earth, loosened something in both of us. As plates of food arrived without being ordered, delicate fried artichokes, handmade pasta with truffles, tender veal that melted on my tongue, our conversation flowed more easily. I told him about my struggle to find work in publishing, my failed relationship with a boyfriend who couldn't handle my financial stress, my small apartment with the leaking ceiling that the landlord refused to fix. In turn, He shared fragments of his life, his travels, his continuing passion for architecture, his loneliness at the top of an empire he'd inherited rather than chosen. With each revelation, the caricature of the dangerous Mafia boss began to blur at the edges, revealing the complicated man beneath. "You're not what I expected," I admitted, accepting a spoonful of tiramisu he offered across the table, an unexpectedly intimate gesture. "What did you expect? Someone colder, more calculating." I licked cream from my lips, noticing how his eyes tracked the movement. "Less human?" he supplied. I nodded. "Lisa made you sound like some kind of monster." Something shadowed his expression. "Make no mistake, Stella. I've done things that would terrify you. I've had to become what circumstances demanded." "Then why show me this side of you?" The question had been building all evening. He reached across the table, his fingers tracing the inside of my wrist where my pulse jumped beneath his touch. "Because from the moment I saw you, I knew you were different. A light in a dark room." The intensity of his gaze made it difficult to breathe. Part of me wanted to pull away, to remind myself of who he was, what he was. But another part, a stronger part, wanted to lean into his touch, to see where this impossible night might lead. Our moment was interrupted by the buzzing of his phone. He checked it, his expression hardening instantly into the mask of authority I'd glimpsed earlier. "I need to take this," he said, sliding out of the booth. "I'll be right back." As he stepped outside, Marco appeared at my table with a glass of limoncello. "So," he said, settling into the seat Adriano had vacated, "how did you meet our boy?" "Just tonight, actually," I admitted. "At the Hawthorne Charity Gala." Marco's eyebrows shot up. "Tonight? Mamma mia. The way he looks at you." He shook his head in wonder. "I haven't seen that look since he was a young man before all this." He gestured vaguely, encompassing Adriano's current life. "What was he like? Before, I mean." Marco's eyes grew distant with memory. "Passionate. Always sketching buildings, bridges. He was going to change the skyline of every city he touched." He sighed deeply. His father's death broke something in him. He did what duty demanded, but the light went out of his eyes. Marco patted my hand. "Until tonight, perhaps." Before I could respond, Adriano returned, his expression controlled, but tension radiating from him like heat. "I'm sorry," he said, placing a hand on Marco's shoulder. "We need to leave. There's a situation that requires my attention." Marco stood, embracing Adriano again. "Don't be a stranger, filio mio." He turned to me, taking both my hands in his. "And you, Bella Stella, come back soon. With or without him." He winked, kissing my cheeks again. Outside, the night had turned colder, or perhaps it was just the shift in Adriano's demeanor that chilled me. His security detail was more alert now, hands hovering near concealed weapons. "I should take you home," he said, his voice distant as he helped me into the car. Disappointment washed over me, sharper than I'd anticipated. "Of course. You have business to attend to." He slid in beside me, giving the driver an address I hadn't provided. "How do you know where I live?" I asked, alarm cutting through the pleasant haze of wine and good food. "I had you looked into while we were at the gala." He stated it as if it were the most natural thing in the world, standard procedure when I meet someone new. "That's..." I searched for a word that wouldn't offend him. "Invasive." "It's necessary." His expression softened slightly. "I apologize if it makes you uncomfortable, but in my world, trust requires verification." "And what did your verification tell you about me?" I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. "That you're exactly who you present yourself to be. 27 years old, graduate of UMass Boston, former editorial assistant at Beacon Press until their downsizing last year. Since then, barista at Cafe Luna, now unemployed after their closure." His precise knowledge of my life made me feel naked, exposed. No criminal record, no suspicious connections, just a woman trying to keep her head above water. The car turned onto my street in Dorchester, a world away from the luxury we'd been surrounded by all evening. I was acutely aware of the peeling paint on my triple-decker, the broken concrete steps leading to the front door, the security light that had been burned out for months. This is me. I said unnecessarily as we pulled up to the curb. Adriano surveyed the building, his expression unreadable. Let me walk you to your door. That's not necessary. It wasn't a question. He was already out of the car, extending his hand to help me. We climbed the stairs to the third floor in silence. My awareness of him heightened in the confined space of the stairwell. At my door, I fumbled with my key, suddenly nervous. Thank you for tonight, I said, turning to face him. It was unexpected. In a good way, I hope. His voice had dropped lower, his body close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. I'm still deciding, I answered honestly. Something like admiration flickered in his eyes. Most people tell me what they think I want to hear. I'm not most people. No, he agreed, reaching up to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. You're not. The gesture was tender, almost reverent, at odds with the power I knew he wielded. His fingers lingered against my cheek, and I found myself leaning into his touch, my body betraying my better judgment. I'd like to see you again, he said. It wasn't really a request, but it wasn't quite a command either. In the space between, I found room to breathe, to consider. I don't think that's wise, I said, even as every cell in my body screamed the opposite. Wisdom is overrated. His thumb brushed across my lower lip, sending electricity down my spine. Tomorrow night, I'll send a car. I haven't agreed, I reminded him. But you will. The certainty in his voice should have angered me, but instead, it made my heart race faster. Before I could formulate a response, he leaned in, his lips brushing my cheek just beside the corner of my mouth. Not quite a kiss, but a promise of one. Good night, Stella, he murmured, his breath warm against my skin. I stood frozen as he descended the stairs, only releasing my held breath when I heard the front door close behind him. With trembling hands, I unlocked my apartment and stepped inside, leaning against the closed door. The contrast between the evening I'd just experienced and my cramped apartment was jarring. The peeling wallpaper, the secondhand furniture, the stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen counter. All harsh reminders of reality after the fairy tale of the night. I was still wearing Adriano's jacket, I realized. Slipping it off, I held the expensive fabric to my face, inhaling his scent one last time before carefully hanging it on the back of a chair. Common sense told me to never see him again. To return his jacket via courier with a polite note declining further contact. To run as far as possible from a man who represented a world of danger I couldn't begin to comprehend. Instead, I found myself moving to the window, watching as his Bentley pulled away from the curb. Just before it disappeared around the corner, I saw the flash of another car's headlights switching on, pulling out to follow at a discreet distance. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the draft from my poorly sealed windows. I wasn't the only one watching Adriano Russo tonight, and something told me the other observers didn't have his best interests at heart. I stepped back from the window, drawing the threadbare curtains closed. As I did, my phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. Sweet dreams, Stella. The car will come at 8. I should have been frightened by how easily he'd gotten my number, should have been outraged at his presumption. Instead, I felt a treacherous thrill as I typed a single word in response, okay. The reply came immediately, good girl. I fell asleep that night still tasting wine on my lips, still feeling the phantom touch of his fingers against my skin, still hearing his whispered words. Let them watch. They'll learn you belong to me. I didn't yet understand how prophetic those words would prove to be. The next morning dawned gray and drizzly, matching my mood as reality reasserted itself. In the harsh light of day, the previous night seemed like a dream, or a momentary madness. What had I been thinking? Agreeing to see Adriano again? A man who had me investigated within hours of meeting me. A man who, by his own oblique admission, had done things that would horrify me. I spent the morning alternating between practical tasks, sending out job applications, calling about an overdue electric bill, and glancing at my phone, half expecting to see a message canceling tonight's plans. Part of me hoped he would, the more sensible part. At noon, my doorbell rang. No one ever visited me unannounced. Cautiously, I peered through the peephole to see a delivery man holding a large white box. "Delivery for Stella Bennett," he called through the door. I opened it cautiously. "That's me." "Sign here, please." After I scrawled my signature, he handed over a box so light I wondered if it was empty. Back inside, I set it on my kitchen table and lifted the lid. Nestled in tissue paper was a dress. Deep emerald green silk that slipped through my fingers like water. Beneath it lay a matching pair of heels and a small velvet jewelry box containing teardrop emerald earrings that caught the dim light of my apartment and transformed it into something magical. A small card rested at the bottom, in strong, slashing handwriting, "For tonight. Though you would look beautiful in anything. Or nothing." A heat flooded my face at his boldness. I should return it all. Should text him immediately to cancel. Should listen to every warning bell clanging in my head. Instead, I found myself lifting the dress, holding it against my body as I looked in the mirror. The color made my eyes seem greener, my pale skin luminous. It was easily the most expensive thing I'd ever held, let alone worn. My phone chimed with a text from Lisa. "OMG, call me now. What were you doing with Russo?" I ignored it, setting the phone face down on the counter. Whatever interrogation she had planned would have to wait. I wasn't ready to explain something I didn't understand myself. As evening approached, anxiety and anticipation battled within me. By 7, I was dressed in Adriano's gifts, my hair swept up to showcase the earrings, my makeup subtle but deliberate. I hardly recognized my reflection. The woman staring back at me looked confident, elegant, worthy of a night on the arm of someone like Adriano Russo. It was all an illusion, of course. Beneath the silk and jewels, I was still the same struggling, unemployed woman with mounting debts and dwindling options. But for tonight, at least, I could pretend to be someone else. At precisely 8 o'clock, my phone chimed with a text. "Your car is waiting downstairs." I took a deep breath, picked up my small clutch, and headed out the door, unaware that I was walking toward a point of no return. The car waiting for me wasn't the Bentley from last night, but a sleek Aston Martin with tinted windows. The driver, different from yesterday but with the same vigilant eyes, opened the door without a word. As I slid into the buttery leather seat, I was surprised to find Adriano himself waiting inside, his dark gaze traveling over me with undisguised appreciation. "You look stunning," he said, his voice low and intimate in the confines of the car. "Thank you for the dress." I smoothed the silk over my knees, hyper-aware of his presence beside me, and the shoes, and the earrings. It was too much. It wasn't nearly enough. He reached across the space between us, his fingers grazing the emerald at my earlobe. "They match your eyes perfectly." The simple touch sent electricity through me. He was dressed immaculately in a charcoal suit that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, a faint shadow of stubble darkening his jaw. The effect was devastating. "Where are we going tonight?" I asked, trying to regain my composure. "My home." He watched my expression carefully. "For dinner. Nothing more than you're comfortable with." The idea of seeing where he lived both thrilled and terrified me. His home would reveal more about him than our carefully orchestrated evening at the restaurant. It would be stepping further into his world, a world I still knew almost nothing about. "You seem nervous," he observed as the car pulled away from the curb. "Should I be?" His mouth curved into that almost smile that made my heart skip. Always honest. It's refreshing. He reached for my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "No harm will come to you in my home, Stella. You have my word." The sincerity in his voice shouldn't have reassured me as much as it did. After all, what was the word of a man whose business likely involved breaking laws I couldn't even imagine? Yet somehow I believed him. We drove out of Boston, heading north along the coast. The rain had cleared, leaving the night sky scattered with stars that appeared and disappeared behind wispy clouds. Adriano maintained a light hold on my hand, his touch both possessive and gentle. "Tell me more about your writing," he said, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between us. I blinked in surprise. "How did you know I write? You mentioned wanting to be a writer once. I assume that means you still write, even if it's not your profession." His observation was unnervingly accurate. "I do," I admitted. "Nothing worth reading. Just stories I work on late at night when I can't sleep." What kind of stories? I hesitated, unused to discussing my private creative outlet. Reimagined fairy tales mostly. Darker versions where the princess saves herself. Interest flickered in his eyes. I'd like to read them sometime. The thought of Adriano Russo reading my amateur fiction was so absurd. I nearly laughed. They're really not very good. Let me decide that. There was no condescension in his tone, only genuine curiosity. What else keeps you awake at night besides writing? The question was innocent enough, but something in his voice made it feel more intimate. Worry mostly. About money. About the future. And now? And now what? His eyes held mine. What will you think about tonight when you're lying awake? Heat bloomed in my chest, spreading upward to my face. Probably this conversation, he smiled. A real one this time that transformed his features from handsome to breathtaking. Good. The car turned onto a private road, winding through dense trees that eventually opened to reveal a sprawling property overlooking the ocean. The house, though mansion would be a more accurate term, was modern and glass-fronted, perched on a cliff with waves crashing below. "This is where you live?" I asked, unable to keep the awe from my voice. "One of my homes," he replied, watching my reaction. "I prefer this one. It's private." As we pulled into a circular driveway, I noticed the security. Discreet but unmistakable. Men patrolled the grounds and cameras were positioned strategically around the property. It was beautiful, but fortified, like its owner. Adriano led me inside, his hand resting lightly on my lower back. The interior was a study in contrasts, soaring ceilings and walls of glass showcasing the dramatic seascape, while warm wood and soft textures made it feel surprisingly inviting. Modern art hung on the walls, sculptures placed thoughtfully throughout the open space. "You have a beautiful home," I said, following him through the entrance hall into a vast living area. "Thank you." He gestured toward the floor-to-ceiling windows where the full moon cast a silver path across the dark water. "The view is why I bought it." A woman appeared silently, not security, but staff, I realized from her attire. "Dinner is ready whenever you are, Mr. Russo." "Thank you, Mrs. Chen. We'll have a drink first." She nodded and disappeared as quietly as she'd arrived. "Would you like to see more of the house before dinner?" Adriano asked. "I'd love to." He guided me through rooms that revealed more of himself than any conversation could. A state-of-the-art kitchen, where he admitted to cooking when he needed to clear his mind. A gym where he trained daily. A library with floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with an eclectic mix of architecture texts, classics, and contemporary fiction. I paused at a drafting table set up near the library's windows, architectural drawings spread across its surface. "Are these yours?" A flicker of something like vulnerability crossed his face. "A hobby I haven't entirely abandoned." I leaned closer, examining the intricate designs for what appeared to be a community center. "These are incredible. The light distribution, the flow of the space." I looked up to find him watching me intently. "You should have been an architect, in another life, perhaps." He moved beside me, his shoulder brushing mine. "This design is for a youth center in the North End. Marco's been asking for years." "You're building it for him?" "For the community." He gathered the drawings, aligning their edges with precise movements. "A place for kids to go after school, something positive." The revelation didn't fit with my preconceptions about him, about what a man in his position would care about. Before I could question further, he guided me to a different part of the house, stopping before a closed door. "This room you might find particularly interesting," he said, opening it to reveal a collection that took my breath away. Books, hundreds of them, filled custom-built shelves. But these weren't just any books. Glass cases protected what I instantly recognized as rare editions and first printings. "Oh my God," I breathed, moving toward the nearest case where a first edition of The Great Gatsby rested. "This is incredible." "You can touch them," Adriano said, entering a code on a keypad that unlocked the case. "They're meant to be handled, not just displayed." With reverent fingers, I lifted the Fitzgerald, opening it carefully to find the original dust jacket preserved. "How did you start collecting?" "My mother loved books." His voice softened with memory. "The first edition I bought was for her, Dante's Inferno. After she died, I kept collecting. It connected me to her somehow. He showed me his favorites, a Shakespeare folio, a signed Hemingway, a beautifully illustrated Alice in Wonderland. Each came with a story of its acquisition, revealing a passion I hadn't expected from him. "This one made me think of you," he said, retrieving a slim volume from another case. "When I saw you last night." He placed it in my hands, a first edition of Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber, her dark feminist retellings of classic fairy tales. "You couldn't have known I'd like this," I said, stunned by the coincidence. "I didn't. But something about you reminded me of her heroines. Beautiful, brave, unwilling to be victims of circumstance." His fingers brushed mine as he took the book back, returning it to its place. Now I know why. The moment stretched between us, charged with something deeper than physical attraction. Standing in this room filled with treasures he clearly cherished, seeing the passion in his eyes as he spoke of literature, I glimpsed yet another layer of this complex man. "We should eat," he said finally, breaking the spell, "before Mrs. Chen thinks we've forgotten her efforts." Dinner was served on a terrace overlooking the ocean, heaters warding off the autumn chill. The meal was exquisite. Seafood caught that morning, wine from his personal cellar, dessert that melted on my tongue. Throughout, our conversation flowed easily, covering everything from books to music to travel. It was only as Mrs. Chen cleared the dessert plates that Adriano's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression hardening into the mask of authority I was beginning to recognize. "Excuse me," he said, standing. "I need to take this. Please enjoy the view. I won't be long." As he stepped away to take the call, I turned my attention to the moonlit ocean below. The waves crashed against the cliffs in a hypnotic rhythm, the vastness of the water a reminder of how small my everyday concerns were in the grand scheme of things. I was so lost in thought, I didn't hear him return until he spoke from directly behind me. "Beautiful, isn't it?" I turned to find him standing closer than expected, his presence enveloping me like a physical force. "It's magnificent. I come out here when I need perspective." His eyes were darker than usual, troubled by whatever the call had contained. "The ocean doesn't care about our problems. It's been here long before us, and will remain long after. Is everything okay?" I ventured, unsure if I had the right to ask. He considered me for a moment before answering. "There's a situation developing with a rival organization. Nothing for you to worry about." The casual reference to what must be another crime family sent a chill through me, a stark reminder of who he really was beneath the cultured exterior. "Does it bother you?" he asked, reading my expression with unsettling accuracy. What I do? I couldn't lie. Not when he was looking at me like that. Yes. It should bother anyone. Rather than anger, my honesty seemed to please him. Most women I meet either pretend not to know or convince themselves it's all legitimate business. "I'm not most women. No," he agreed, stepping closer until I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "You're not." His hand came up to cup my cheek, his touch so gentle it made my heart ache. "I should send you home," he murmured, his thumb tracing my lower lip. "Before I do something we might both regret. Is that what you want?" My voice was barely audible over the sound of the waves below. "What I want," he said, his eyes never leaving mine, "is to keep you, to make you mine in every way possible." The raw honesty in his voice sent heat spiraling through me. "But what I want doesn't matter. What do you want, Stella?" The question hung between us, weighted with possibilities. I knew what the sensible answer was. To thank him for dinner, return to Boston, and never see him again. To run as far as possible from a man who represented a world of danger I could scarcely comprehend. Instead, I found myself rising on my toes, closing the distance between us until my lips brushed his. "This," I whispered against his mouth. "I want this." Something broke in him then, a restraint he'd been maintaining since we met. His arms encircled me, pulling me against the hard length of his body as his mouth claimed mine in a kiss that was both tender and demanding. I melted into him, my hands finding their way to his shoulders, his neck, his hair. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes had darkened to obsidian. "Be very sure, Stella," he warned, his voice rough with desire, "because if we start this, I won't let you go easily." The possessiveness in his tone should have frightened me. Instead, it sent a thrill of excitement through my veins. "I'm sure." He took my hand, leading me through the house to a wing we hadn't visited earlier. His bedroom was as I might have expected. Spacious, masculine, dominated by a massive bed facing the same ocean view. But I had little time to observe the details before his mouth was on mine again, his hands roaming my body with increasing urgency. We fell onto his bed in a tangle of limbs and half-removed clothing, the silk of my dress sliding against the crisp cotton of his shirt. His lips traced a burning path down my neck, across my collarbone, to the swell of my breasts above the dress's neckline. "You're even more beautiful than I imagined," he murmured against my skin, his accent thickening with desire. "And I've imagined you many times since last night." His confession sent heat pooling low in my belly. I reached for the buttons of his shirt, desperate to feel his skin against mine. He helped me, shrugging the garment off to reveal a torso sculpted by regular workouts, but also marked by the evidence of a dangerous life. Scars that told stories I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. I traced one that curved along his ribs, a question in my touch. "Knife," he explained simply. "Moscow 5 years ago, a business negotiation that went poorly." Another reality check. Another reminder of the world he inhabited. But it was too late for second thoughts. My body had made its decision, overriding every warning signal my brain tried to send. His hands found the zipper of my dress, pausing with a question in his eyes. At my nod, he slowly lowered it, his gaze never leaving mine as he peeled the silk away from my skin. What followed was a revelation. A man known for violence touching me with exquisite tenderness, a man accustomed to taking whatever he wanted, asking permission with every caress. A man surrounded by luxury savoring me as if I were the most precious thing he'd ever held. Afterward, as we lay tangled in his sheets, my head resting on his chest, his fingers tracing idle patterns on my bare back, a contentment unlike anything I'd ever known settled over me. It was dangerous, this feeling. More dangerous than his world, his enemies, his business. This sense of belonging, of rightness, when everything logical told me I should feel the opposite. "What are you thinking?" he asked, pressing a kiss to my temple. "That I should be terrified right now. But I'm not." His arms tightened around me. "Good. There's nothing to fear from me, Stella. Not ever." I believed him. God help me. Despite everything I knew about him, everything I still didn't know, I believed him. Sleep claimed me eventually, cradled in the arms of a man who had killed, who had built an empire on violence and fear, who had whispered against my skin that I belonged to him, as if it were an irrefutable fact of nature. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows that had been clear the night before, but were now partially frosted for privacy. Adriana was gone, but a note rested on his pillow. "Business that couldn't wait. Mrs. Chen will make you breakfast. The car will take you home whenever you're ready. I'll call you later." And next to the note lay a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate gold chain with a pendant, a tiny key inlaid with diamonds so small they caught the light like dewdrops. I held it up, watching it spin in the morning light, a key. The symbolism wasn't lost on me, though I wasn't sure what door it was meant to unlock. His heart, his world, or the cage he was building around me that I was walking into willingly. I showered in his enormous bathroom, borrowed one of his soft t-shirts, and made my way downstairs where Mrs. Chen was indeed waiting with coffee and a breakfast spread that could have fed 10 people. "Mr. Russo said you might want to go home to change before your lunch," she said, pouring me coffee exactly as I liked it, a detail Adriano must have shared. "Lunch?" I repeated, confused. "With Mr. Russo's sister," she clarified, as if this were perfectly normal. "The car will take you home and then to Bella Rosa at 1 o'clock. A sister. I hadn't known he had one, and apparently I was meeting her today. The casual way they were folding me into Adriano's life made my head spin. "I should probably call him," I said, reaching for my phone only to realize it wasn't with me. "Mr. Russo left this for you," Mrs. Chen said, producing my clutch from the previous night. He had to leave quite suddenly. There was an incident that required his immediate attention. The bland way she referenced what could only be something illegal or violent was unsettling. How many incidents had she witnessed or heard about in her time working for him? I checked my phone to find 3 missed calls from Lisa and a text from an unknown number that I assumed was Adriano's. "Good morning, beautiful. Sorry to leave. Some business came up that couldn't wait. My sister Bianca is looking forward to meeting you at lunch. She won't bite, I promise. Last night was just the beginning. The presumption that I would simply go along with his plans, meeting his sister without him even present, should have irritated me. Instead, I found myself curious about this woman who shared Adriano's blood. What would she be like? What would she think of me? After breakfast, I changed back into the emerald dress, fastened the key necklace around my throat, and let Adriano's driver take me back to my apartment. The contrast between his oceanfront mansion and my cramped third-floor walk-up had never been more stark. I had just enough time to shower, change into something more appropriate for lunch, and try to process the whirlwind events of the past 24 hours before the car returned to collect me. Bella Rosa was an upscale restaurant in Back Bay, the kind of place where lunch reservations were made months in advance. I was led immediately to a secluded table, where a striking woman with Adriano's dark eyes and sharp features waited. "Stella," she said, rising to greet me with European kisses on both cheeks. "I'm Bianca Russo. My brother has told me almost nothing about you, which means you must be special indeed." Bianca Russo was nothing like I'd expected. Where Adriano radiated controlled danger, she exuded polished sophistication. Her sleek black hair was cut into a sharp bob, her designer suit impeccably tailored, her makeup flawless. Only her eyes, the same deep brown as her brother's, betrayed their shared bloodline. "Please sit," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. "I've taken the liberty of ordering wine. I hope you don't mind." I settled into my seat, hyper-aware of the curious glances from nearby diners. Not at all. Though I admit I was surprised to hear Adriano had arranged this lunch. A server appeared with a bottle of white wine, pouring 2 glasses before disappearing again. "My brother can be impulsive when it comes to things he wants." Bianca studied me over the rim of her wine glass. "And he very much wants you, it seems." The directness of her statement caught me off guard. "We just met 2 days ago. Time is irrelevant in matters of attraction." She waved a dismissive hand, diamond bracelet catching the light. "Tell me about yourself, Stella Bennett. What exactly have you done to captivate my brother so thoroughly?" "I wish I knew," I answered honestly. "I'm nobody special." Her perfectly arched eyebrow rose. "That's where you're wrong. Adriano doesn't waste time on the ordinary." The conversation paused as a waiter arrived with appetizers I didn't remember ordering, delicate plates of tuna tartare and arancini. "Forgive my bluntness," Bianca continued once we were alone again. "But I need to understand your intentions with my brother." I nearly choked on my wine. "My intentions? I think that's usually the question asked about the man, not the woman." A smile flickered across her face, softening her sharp features momentarily. "In normal circumstances, perhaps. But Adriano is not a normal man, and his position makes him vulnerable in ways you might not appreciate. You think I want something from him." It wasn't a question. The assumption stung, though I could hardly blame her for it. "Everyone wants something from him," she replied matter-of-factly. "Money, power, protection. The question is what you want." I set down my fork, meeting her gaze directly. "I don't want anything from him. I didn't even know who he was when we met." She studied me for a long moment, searching for deception. "You understand what my brother does for a living?" "I have an idea," I said carefully. "But you spent the night with him anyway." Her tone wasn't judgmental, merely curious. Most women with your background would run in the opposite direction. Maybe I'm not as smart as most women. That drew a genuine laugh from her. "Or perhaps you're more honest about what attracts you. Power is seductive, Stella. So is danger. There's no shame in admitting it." I shifted uncomfortably, unwilling to analyze my attraction to Adriano quite so clinically. "It's more complicated than that. Of course it is," she conceded. "Love always is." "I didn't say anything about love," I objected quickly. Her smile turned knowing. You didn't have to. The main courses arrived, seafood risotto for her, mushroom ravioli for me, providing a welcome interruption. As we ate, Bianca shifted to safer topics, my background, my writing aspirations, my thoughts on Boston. She was surprisingly easy to talk to when not interrogating me about her brother, sharp-witted and genuinely interested in my responses. You're not what I expected, I admitted as we lingered over dessert, tiramisu that reminded me of my dinner with Adriano the night before. A criminal's sister, you mean? Her directness was refreshing, if disconcerting. What did you expect? Some mafioso stereotype from the movies? I don't know what I expected, I admitted. Adriano mentioned you only in passing. Yes. My brother plays his cards very close to his chest. She sipped her espresso. Even with me. Especially since he took over the family business. You're not involved in it? I asked cautiously. I run the legitimate side of things. At my confused expression, she elaborated. Real estate development, import, export, restaurants, nightclubs, every good operation needs a public face. The casual way she referenced what must be money laundering businesses sent a chill through me, a reminder that the elegant woman across from me was as much a part of Adriano's world as his armed guards. And what about you, Stella? Where do you see yourself in all this? Her question cut to the heart of the uncertainty I'd been wrestling with since meeting Adriano. I don't know, I said honestly. This has all happened so fast. A word of advice, she said, her expression softening slightly. My brother moves quickly once he's made a decision. He sees something he wants, he takes it. It's both his greatest strength and his most dangerous flaw. And you think I'm just something he wants to take? The idea bothered me more than I wanted to admit. No, she said after a thoughtful pause. I think you might be the first thing he's wanted that he's afraid he can't keep. Before I could process that statement, her phone chimed. She checked it, her expression shifting subtly. Adriano will meet us at Luciano's gallery opening. The car will take us there. Gallery opening? I'm not dressed for— You're perfect, she interrupted, signaling for the check. Besides, Adriano had some things sent there for you. Of course he had. The casual display of wealth and power, having clothes delivered wherever he thought I might need them, should have felt presumptuous. Instead, I found it oddly thrilling, being caught up in the whirlwind that was Adriano Russo's attention. The gallery was in the south end, a converted warehouse space now housing contemporary art. A small crowd of well-dressed people mingled inside, champagne flutes in hand as they discussed the massive canvases adorning the walls. Bianca guided me through the throng, nodding at acquaintances, but stopping for no one. In a private room at the back, I found several garment bags hanging on a rack, my name printed on tags attached to each. I'll give you some privacy, Bianca said, slipping out and closing the door behind her. Inside the first bag was a black cocktail dress that looked like it had been designed specifically for me. Simple yet elegant, with a neckline that would showcase the key necklace I still wore. The other bags contained alternatives, but it was clear which one Adriano had intended as the first choice. I changed quickly, grateful for the adjoining bathroom where I could refresh my makeup and tame my hair. The dress fit perfectly, as did the strappy heels that accompanied it. Looking in the mirror, I hardly recognized myself. The woman reflected back seemed confident, sophisticated, at home in this world of wealth and power that had been thrust upon me. When I emerged, Bianca nodded approvingly. Perfect. Now let's find my brother before he terrorizes the poor artist for being too friendly with me. Are he and Luciano friends? I asked as we made our way back to the main gallery space. Luciano owes him money, she said simply. This show is part of the repayment plan. Another casual reference to Adriano's less-than-legal activities, delivered as if discussing the weather. I was beginning to understand that this would be my new normal if I continued seeing him, constant reminders of the darker aspects of his life, interspersed with moments of surprising tenderness. I spotted Adriano before he saw me, his tall figure commanding attention even in a room full of striking people. He was dressed in a charcoal suit similar to the one from the previous night. Deep in conversation with a nervous-looking man I assumed was Luciano, two of his ever-present security detail hovered nearby, surveying the room with watchful eyes. As if sensing my gaze, Adriano looked up, his expression transforming when he saw me. The intensity of his focus made my breath catch. It was as if everyone else in the room had suddenly disappeared. He excused himself from Luciano and crossed to us in long strides. Without hesitation, he pulled me into his arms, claiming my mouth in a kiss that was far from appropriate for a public setting. I should have been embarrassed, but all I could feel was the heat of his body against mine and the possessive press of his lips. "I missed you this morning," he murmured when we finally broke apart, his accent thicker than usual. "You could have woken me to say goodbye," I replied, aware of Bianca watching us with barely concealed amusement. "You were sleeping so peacefully." His hand settled at the small of my back, a gesture I was beginning to realize was his way of marking territory. "I see you've met my sister. We had a lovely lunch," Bianca said. Very illuminating. The look Adriano shot her carried a warning. "I hope you behaved yourself. Don't I always?" She smiled innocently. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I should congratulate Luciano on his creative debt repayment." As she walked away, Adriano turned his full attention back to me. "I'm sorry about this morning. There was a situation that required immediate attention. Mrs. Chen mentioned an incident," I said carefully. "Is everything okay?" His expression darkened momentarily. "It's handled. Nothing for you to worry about." The dismissal, gentle as it was, reminded me of the boundaries around his business. Boundaries I wasn't sure I wanted to cross. "The dress is beautiful," I said instead, changing the subject, "though you seem to have an uncanny knowledge of my measurements." "I pay attention to what matters," he replied, his eyes traveling over me with undisguised appreciation. "And everything about you matters to me." The naked emotion in his voice made my heart skip. This man, this dangerous, powerful man, looked at me as if I were the most precious thing in his world. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. "Come," he said, taking my hand. "Let me show you the collection. Luciano may be in debt, but his work has merit." We moved through the gallery, Adriano's arm around my waist, his security detail maintaining a discreet distance. He was knowledgeable about art, pointing out techniques and influences in the massive abstract canvases, with the same precision he'd shown discussing architecture. People watched us, some openly staring, others pretending not to notice while stealing glances. I felt their curiosity like a physical touch, wondering who I was to be on the arm of Adriano Russo. "They're all talking about us," I murmured, leaning closer to him. "Let them," he replied, unconcerned. "Let them see who holds my attention now." The possessiveness in his tone sent a shiver down my spine, part thrill, part warning. I was beginning to understand that Adriano's interest wasn't casual. He didn't do casual. He was claiming me, publicly and deliberately. As we paused before a particularly striking canvas of blues and golds, I became aware of a woman watching us with undisguised hostility. Tall, model-thin, with the kind of beauty that came from expensive maintenance, she clutched a champagne flute with white-knuckled intensity. "Who is that?" I asked quietly, nodding in her direction. Adriano glanced over, his expression hardening. "Sofia Valentini, a mistake from the past." Before I could inquire further, the woman in question was approaching, her stilettos clicking aggressively against the concrete floor. "Adriano," she purred, ignoring me completely. "What a surprise finding you here. It's been too long." "Not long enough," he replied coldly. "Sofia, this is Stella. Stella, an old acquaintance." The dismissive introduction made her face flush beneath her perfect makeup. "Acquaintance? Is that what you're calling it now?" She turned to me finally, her smile venomous. "Did he tell you about us, Kara? About the ring he gave me? Or has he conveniently forgotten that part?" Adriano's arm tightened around my waist. "That's enough, Sofia." "He'll tire of you," she continued as if he hadn't spoken, her eyes raking over me dismissively. "He always does. Once the novelty wears off, once you bore him, he'll discard you just like he did me. I suggest you walk away," Adriano said, his voice dropping to a dangerous octave. "Before you say something you'll regret." Two of his security guards materialized beside us, their presence a silent threat. Sofia's eyes darted between them, calculation replacing her initial bravado. "Enjoy him while you can," she said to me, forcing a brittle laugh. "Just remember, everything he touches eventually turns to ash." With that parting shot, she turned on her heel and stalked away, leaving a wake of tension behind her. "I'm sorry about that," Adriano said, once she was out of earshot. "Sophia has difficulty accepting rejection. She said you gave her a ring." The implication hung between us. He sighed, running a hand through his hair in a rare gesture of frustration. "It was a gift, not an engagement. She chose to interpret it differently, and the relationship ended 2 years ago. She became possessive, unstable." His jaw tightened. "I don't wish to discuss her further. She's irrelevant to us." The dismissal bothered me, not because I cared about his past relationship, but because of the casual way he eliminated people from his life when they no longer served his purpose. Would I one day be just another mistake from the past? As if reading my thoughts, he turned to face me fully, his hands cradling my face. "Don't let her get into your head, Stella. What I feel for you is different. What we have is different." "How can you be so sure? We barely know each other. I know everything I need to know." His thumbs traced my cheekbones, his gaze intense. "From the moment I saw you, I knew you were meant to be mine." The certainty in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, it sent a thrill through my veins, a dangerous heat that pooled low in my belly. This was madness, this instant connection, this all-consuming attraction. Yet I couldn't deny the rightness I felt in his arms, as if I'd been searching for something my entire life, without knowing what it was until now. "Let's get out of here," he said, reading the desire in my eyes. "I've made an appearance. That's enough." We didn't say goodbye to anyone, not Bianca, not Luciano. Adriano simply took my hand and led me through the gallery, his security clearing a path as we went. Outside, his car was waiting, engine running. The ride back to his house was charged with tension, his hand on my thigh, his eyes never leaving my face. We barely made it through the door before he was pressing me against the wall, his mouth hungry on mine, his hands exploring my body with increasing urgency. "I thought about this all day," he confessed between kisses, his voice rough with desire. "About you in my bed, wearing nothing but that key around your neck." I gasped as his lips found the sensitive spot below my ear. "The key? What does it mean?" He pulled back slightly, his eyes dark with emotion. "It means you have access to parts of me no one else does." His hand came up to cradle my face. "It means I'm trusting you with more than I've ever trusted anyone." The admission stole my breath. I knew what it cost a man like him to make such a declaration, a man whose survival depended on keeping others at a distance, on never showing vulnerability. Words failed me, so I answered with actions instead, pulling him back to me, pouring everything I couldn't say into my kiss. We made it to his bedroom eventually, leaving a trail of discarded clothing in our wake. Later, as we lay tangled in his sheets, my head on his chest listening to the steady thrum of his heartbeat, a contentment unlike anything I'd ever known washed over me. It was dangerous, this feeling. More dangerous than his business, his enemies, his world. This sense that I belonged here, with him, when every logical part of my brain was screaming warnings. "What are you thinking?" he asked, his fingers tracing idle patterns on my bare shoulder. "That this is insane," I admitted. 2 days ago, I didn't know you existed. Now I'm in your bed, wearing your key, meeting your sister. Does it feel wrong? I considered the question carefully. "No," I said finally. "That's what scares me. It feels like the most right thing I've ever done." His arms tightened around me, his lips pressing against my temple. "Then stop thinking so much and just feel." I wanted to. God, how I wanted to surrender completely to this unexpected connection. But Sophia's words lingered in the back of my mind, along with the memory of the way Adriano had dismissed her. Once the novelty wears off, once you bore him, he'll discard you, just like he did me. "Adriano," I said hesitantly, "what do you really want from me?" He shifted, propping himself up on one elbow to look down at me. "Everything," he said simply. "I want everything, Stella. Your days, your nights, your laughter, your tears. I want to be the first person you see in the morning and the last before you sleep." His hand cupped my cheek. "I want you to be mine in every way possible." The intensity of his declaration should have terrified me. Instead, it called to something primal within me, a desire to be claimed, to belong. to matter that deeply to someone. You hardly know me, I whispered. I know enough, he insisted. The rest, we'll discover together. I wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this whirlwind connection was real, that it could last beyond the initial attraction. But life had taught me hard lessons about fairy tales and happy endings. What about your world? I asked. Your business, the danger. His expression sobered. I won't lie to you, Stella. My life comes with risks, but I can promise you this. I will do everything in my power to keep those risks from touching you. His fingers traced the line of my jaw. I protect what's mine. Always. The possessiveness in his tone sent another of those contradictory thrills through me, part warning, part excitement. I was entering dangerous territory, becoming something precious to a man with dangerous enemies. I'm not sure I'm cut out for this life, I admitted. The security, the looking over your shoulder, the not knowing, you're stronger than you think. His faith in me was unwavering, and you won't be alone. I'll be beside you every step of the way. It was a seductive vision, never having to struggle alone again, having this powerful man as my champion and protector. But what would be the cost? What would I have to sacrifice to belong in his world? As if sensing my internal conflict, Adriano pulled me closer, his kiss gentler than before. Don't decide tonight, he murmured against my lips. Just stay with me. The rest will sort itself out. I surrendered to his embrace, pushing my doubts aside for the moment. Tomorrow would bring reality crashing back. Questions about my future, about what a relationship with Adriano would mean for my independence, my safety, my very identity. But for tonight, I would allow myself to simply feel. The next morning, I woke to sunlight and the sensation of Adriano's eyes on me. He was already dressed in a crisp suit, sitting on the edge of the bed watching me sleep. Good morning, beautiful, he said, leaning down to kiss me softly. You're dressed, I observed, pulling the sheet higher to cover my nakedness. Another early meeting? Unfortunately, he brushed a strand of hair from my face. Business that can't wait, but I have something for you before I go. From his pocket, he withdrew a small box, larger than the one that had contained the key necklace, but still small enough to fit in his palm. Adriano, it's not what you think, he said, reading my sudden panic. Not yet, anyway. He opened the box to reveal a key. A real one this time. Not a symbolic piece of jewelry. This is to my penthouse in the city, he explained. I want you to stay there while I'm handling this business matter. I have my own apartment, I reminded him. Though the thought of returning to my cramped space after experiencing his luxury was less appealing than it should have been, which is neither secure nor suitable. His tone brooked no argument. The penthouse is in the Millennium Tower. Everything you need will be there. Clothes, food, anything you desire. Just ask the concierge. For how long? A few days at most. His expression softened at my hesitation. Please, Stella. It would ease my mind to know you're somewhere safe. Safe from what? I asked, suddenly alert. Is there something you're not telling me? He hesitated, clearly weighing how much to reveal. The business matter I'm attending to involves some unstable individuals. Until it's resolved, I would feel better knowing you're protected. The reality of his world crashed back like a bucket of ice water. This wasn't about romance or convenience. It was about keeping me out of the crossfire of whatever violent situation he was handling. Adriano, if there's danger, there's always danger in my life. He interrupted gently. That's the reality, but I manage it. I contain it. His hand found mine, squeezing reassuringly. This is precautionary, nothing more. Will you do this for me? Put that way. How could I refuse? I took the key, feeling its weight, both literal and symbolic, in my palm. Thank you, he said, relief evident in his voice. Francesco will drive you to your apartment to collect whatever you need, then take you to the penthouse. I've instructed the building security about your arrival. The casual display of power and resources still felt foreign to me. Having drivers at my disposal, building security awaiting my arrival, an entire penthouse to myself. It was like stepping into someone else's life. When will I see you again? I asked as he stood to leave. As soon as this situation is resolved. He leaned down for one more kiss, this one lingering with promise. "Think of me while I'm gone. Be careful," I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. A smile touched his lips, always. After he left, I showered and dressed in another outfit that had mysteriously appeared in his closet in my size. The casual way he anticipated my needs was both thoughtful and slightly unnerving, a reminder of his resources and the thoroughness with which he approached everything, including me. Francesco was waiting with the car when I came downstairs, as silent and vigilant as all of Adriano's security team. We drove to my apartment, where I packed a small bag of personal items, the few things I couldn't bear to be without, including my laptop with my writing and a framed photo of my father before he left. The contrast between my life and Adriano's had never been more stark than when Francesco carried my shabby duffel bag into the gleaming lobby of the Millennium Tower. The concierge greeted me by name, escorting me to a private elevator that required a key card, as well as the physical key Adriano had given me. The penthouse took my breath away, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, sleek modern furniture, artwork that probably cost more than my entire life savings. It was beautiful but impersonal, lacking the warmth of Adriano's coastal home. In the master bedroom, I found the closet already filled with clothing in my size, everything from casual wear to evening gowns, all with designer labels I'd only seen in magazines. The adjoining bathroom was stocked with high-end toiletries, the kitchen pantry and refrigerator filled with food and wine. It was like stepping into a gilded cage, comfortable, luxurious, but a cage nonetheless. For the first time since meeting Adriano, I felt the full weight of what entering his world might mean, being protected, provided for, but also controlled in ways both subtle and overt. As I stood at the windows looking out at the city below, my phone chimed with a text from him. "Are you settled in? Is everything to your satisfaction?" I typed back, "It's beautiful. Thank you. But it feels strange being here without you." His response came quickly. "I'll be back before you know it. Make yourself at home. Everything there is yours to use. Miss you already." The sentiment made my heart flutter despite my misgivings. 3 days ago, I had been worrying about making rent. Now I was standing in a millionaire's penthouse, wearing clothes that cost more than my monthly salary, waiting for a man who controlled half the city to return to me. It was a fairy tale, and a nightmare rolled into one. Seductive in its promise of security and affection, terrifying in its potential cost to my independence. As I clutched the key he'd given me, both to this apartment and symbolically to his heart, I wondered what doors I was closing by accepting it. 3 days passed in a strange limbo. I wandered the penthouse like a ghost, sleeping in Adriano's bed, using his shower, wearing the clothes he'd provided. My phone remained stubbornly silent except for brief, reassuring texts. Always the same message in slightly different words. He was handling the situation, he would return soon, I should stay inside where it was safe. On the second day, a florist delivered an enormous arrangement of blood-red roses with a card that read simply, "Counting the hours until I see you again." On the third day, Bianca called. "He's fine," she said before I could even ask, "but the situation is complicated. He asked me to check on you. I'm going stir-crazy," I admitted. "I haven't left the apartment since I got here." "Good. That's exactly what Adriano wants." There was something in her voice, tension, perhaps, or worry, that hadn't been there during our lunch. "Bianca, what's really going on?" I asked, tired of being kept in the dark. I deserve to know if I'm in danger. A long pause, then a sigh. "It's not my place to tell you, but since my brother is being his usual overprotective self." She hesitated. There was an attempt on Adriano's life. The people responsible have been dealt with, but he's being cautious until he's certain all threats have been contained. The casual way she referenced what must have been a violent elimination of enemies made my blood run cold. Yet, beneath the horror, was a more immediate concern. "Is he hurt?" "Nothing serious," which wasn't the same as no. "Look, I know this isn't the life you signed up for, Stella. Few civilians could handle it. If you want out, I can arrange—" "I don't want out," I interrupted, surprising myself with the vehemence in my voice. "I want to see him. Another pause. I'll tell him you said that. It might be just what he needs to hear right now. After we hung up, I paced the penthouse with renewed anxiety. Someone had tried to kill Adriano. He was injured, though Bianca claimed not seriously. And instead of coming to me, he was keeping his distance, protecting me, yes, but also perhaps protecting himself from having to face my reaction to the violence of his world. By the fourth morning, restlessness drove me to the building's private gym on the 30th floor. At least there I could work out my frustration on a treadmill while still technically remaining inside as instructed. The gym was empty when I arrived, the floor-to-ceiling windows offering the same spectacular view as the penthouse 20 floors above. I was 30 minutes into a punishing run, sweat soaking my borrowed designer workout clothes, when I felt it, that familiar weight of being watched. I turned to find Adriano standing in the doorway, his eyes locked on me with an intensity that made my heart stutter. He looked exhausted, a faint bruise yellowing along his jaw, but otherwise whole. He wore a simple black sweater and dark jeans, more casual than I'd ever seen him, somehow more vulnerable for it. I stepped off the treadmill, unsure whether to run to him or maintain my distance. 4 days of worry and isolation had left me with a tangled mess of emotions: relief, anger, fear, longing. He made the decision for me, crossing the room in long strides and pulling me into his arms. I went willingly, breathing in his familiar scent, feeling the solid strength of him against me. "You're here," I murmured against his chest. "You're okay." His arms tightened around me. "I'm sorry for staying away. I needed to be sure it was safe." I pulled back slightly, studying his face, the shadows under his eyes, the tight set of his jaw. "Bianca told me someone tried to kill you." A flash of annoyance crossed his features. "She shouldn't have worried you. She shouldn't have had to," I countered. "You should have told me yourself." He sighed, releasing me to run a hand through his hair, a gesture I was beginning to recognize as a sign of frustration. "I was trying to protect you from the ugliness of my world. By shutting me out? By giving you plausible deniability," he said, his voice hardening slightly. "What happened to those men? It wasn't something you should have to know about." The implication hung heavy between us. Adriano hadn't just defended himself, he had eliminated his enemies, permanently. "I want to go upstairs," I said finally. "This isn't a conversation for a public space." He nodded, taking my hand and leading me to the private elevator. We rode in silence, the tension between us thick enough to touch. In the penthouse, I headed straight for the shower, needing a moment to collect my thoughts. When I emerged, wrapped in one of his plush robes, he was waiting in the living room, 2 glasses of whiskey poured. I accepted one, taking a fortifying sip before facing him. "Tell me everything," I said. "No more protecting me from the truth." He studied me for a long moment, as if weighing how much I could handle. "The Colombians thought they could expand into my territory," he said finally. "They started with small incursions, a protection racket here, a smuggling operation there. I sent warnings. They ignored them." He swirled the amber liquid in his glass, watching the light play through it. "3 nights ago they sent a hit team to the restaurant where I was meeting with my captains. 3 men with automatic weapons." His voice was clinically detached, as if describing a business transaction rather than an attempt on his life. "My security neutralized 2. The 3rd managed to get off a shot before he was subdued." "That's how you got this," I said, reaching out to gently trace the bruise on his jaw. "Debris from a shattered mirror," he confirmed. "Nothing serious." "And the men who sent them?" His eyes met mine, unflinching. "They won't be sending anyone else." The coldness in his voice should have terrified me. This was the other side of Adriano Russo. Not the man who collected rare books and designed community centers, but the one who eliminated threats with ruthless efficiency, the man who had built and maintained a criminal empire through violence and fear. "This is your world," I said softly. "This is what being with you means." "It's part of it," he acknowledged. "The part I wanted to shield you from." His hand covered mine where it still rested against his cheek. "But yes, this is the reality of my life. I won't insult you by pretending otherwise." I withdrew my hand, moving to the window to stare out at the city below. From this height, everything looked orderly, peaceful. But I knew better now. I knew about the currents of power and violence that flowed beneath the surface. "I need to know something," I said, my back still to him. "And I need the truth, Adriano, not what you think I want to hear, always," he promised. I turned to face him. "If I walked away right now, if I said this was too much, that I couldn't live in your world, what would happen?" Pain flashed across his features before he controlled it. "I would let you go," he said, each word precise and measured. "I would ensure you were financially secure, that you never had to worry about rent or bills again. And I would make certain that no one, not my enemies, not my allies, ever bothered you. You wouldn't try to keep me against my will?" The question seemed to wound him physically. "Is that what you think of me, that I would cage you?" He set down his glass, approaching me with slow, deliberate steps. "Stella, I want you by my side because you choose to be there. Anything else would be meaningless." I believed him. God help me. Despite everything I now knew about him, despite the violence and danger that surrounded him, I believed in the sincerity of his feelings for me. "I'm scared," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Not of you. Of this life. Of waking up one day to learn you've been killed. Of always waiting for the other shoe to drop." "Fear is natural," he said, standing close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, but not touching me. "It keeps us alert, keeps us alive, but you can't let it rule you. Is that how you live? With the constant knowledge that someone might be coming for you?" "I live each day fully aware it could be my last," he said simply. "It makes every moment more precious, especially the moments with you." The raw honesty in his voice broke something open inside me. I had been fighting this connection since the moment we met, telling myself it was madness, that it could never work. But standing here now, facing the reality of who he was, both the darkness and the light, I found myself unwilling to walk away. "I don't know if I can do this," I said honestly. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for your world." "You're stronger than you think." His hand came up to cradle my face, his touch gentle despite the power I knew those hands possessed, but I understand if it's too much to ask. I leaned into his touch, closing my eyes. "I need time. To think. To process all of this." "Take all the time you need," he said, though I could hear the strain in his voice. "The penthouse is yours for as long as you want it. I can stay elsewhere if my presence complicates things for you." The thought of him leaving again, of facing more days alone with my churning thoughts, was suddenly intolerable. "No," I said, reaching for him. "Stay, please." Relief flooded his features as he gathered me in his arms, his lips finding mine in a kiss that spoke of desperation and need. Whatever doubts I had about our future, my body had no uncertainties about wanting him, here and now. We made our way to the bedroom, shedding clothes as we went. This time our lovemaking had an edge of urgency, as if we both needed to affirm life in the face of the death that had nearly claimed him. I traced the new bruises on his body, evidence of the violence he'd endured, while he whispered promises against my skin. Promises of protection, of devotion, of a future together. Afterward, as we lay tangled in the sheets, my head on his chest listening to the steady beat of his heart, I found myself thinking about choices, about crossroads and paths taken, about how a single decision could alter the entire trajectory of a life. "What are you thinking?" he asked, his fingers tracing idle patterns on my bare shoulder. "About choices," I said honestly, "and consequences." He was quiet for a moment, considering. "When I took over after my father's death, I had a choice," he said finally. "I could dismantle the organization, try to go legitimate, or I could embrace it, build it stronger, ensure no one could ever threaten my family again." His arms tightened around me. "I chose power and safety over moral purity. I don't regret it, but I understand the cost." "And what's the cost of choosing you?" I asked, the question that had been haunting me for days finally spoken aloud. "Security, but with risk," he answered without hesitation. "Luxury, but with restrictions. Love, but with the knowledge that my world will always include darkness." His hand tilted my face up to meet his gaze. "I won't lie to you, Stella. Being with me means accepting parts of my life that most people would find unforgivable. The honesty was brutal but necessary. And if I can't accept those parts? Pain flickered in his eyes. Then we say goodbye, and I ensure you never have to worry about money again. I don't want your money, I said immediately. I know. A small smile touched his lips. It's one of the countless reasons I fell in love with you. The word hung in the air between us. Love. He had said it casually, as if it were an established fact rather than a revelation. Love? I repeated, my voice catching. Yes, love. He shifted, propping himself up to look down at me. I've loved you since that first night at the gala, when you looked at me without fear or calculation. When you saw me, really saw me, as more than just my reputation, or my wealth, or my power. That's impossible, I protested. You can't fall in love that quickly, can't you? His fingers traced the curve of my cheek. Haven't you felt it too? This connection between us that defies logic or time? I couldn't deny it. From the moment his eyes had found mine across that crowded ballroom, something had clicked into place. A recognition, a sense of coming home I'd never experienced before. I'm afraid to call it love, I whispered. Love makes you vulnerable. It does, he agreed. It's the greatest risk I've ever taken, greater than any business venture or territory expansion. His eyes held mine, unflinching in their intensity. But some risks are worth taking, Stella. In that moment, looking up at this complex, dangerous, tender man who had stormed into my life and upended everything I thought I knew about myself, I made a choice. Perhaps I had made it days ago, in that first dance, or in his library surrounded by rare books, or in his bed with the sound of waves crashing below. I love you too, I said, the words rising from some deep, certain place inside me. God help me, but I do. The smile that broke across his face was transformative, boyish, joyful, without the sharp edges or careful control he usually maintained. He kissed me then, a kiss of such tenderness it made my heart ache. Say it again, he murmured against my lips. I love you, I repeated, finding it easier the second time, more natural. But loving you doesn't mean I've figured out how to live in your world. We'll figure it out together, he promised. Day by day. I don't expect you to change overnight, Stella. I just need to know you're willing to try. I am, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. But I need something from you too, anything. Honesty, I said firmly. No more shutting me out to protect me. If we're going to do this, really do this, then I need to know what I'm facing, the good and the bad. He considered this, his expression serious. There are some details of my business that it's safer for you not to know. I'm not asking to be involved in your business, I clarified. I'm asking not to be left in the dark when things affect us, like attempts on your life or danger that might touch me. He nodded slowly. That's fair. No more shutting you out. You'll know the broad strokes, if not every detail. And one more thing, I added. I need my independence. I can't just be kept. I need my own work, my own purpose. A smile touched his lips. I wouldn't have it any other way. Your fire, your determination, they're part of what I love about you. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining. What if I helped you publish your stories? Not by buying a publishing house, he added quickly, but by connecting you with legitimate editors who would judge your work on its merits. The offer was tempting, a door opening to a dream I'd nearly abandoned. You would do that? I would do anything to see you fulfilled, Stella. Your happiness is my happiness now. The sincerity in his voice washed over me like a balm. For so long, I had been alone, struggling against the world with no one in my corner. Now I had this man, this powerful, dangerous, loving man, offering to stand beside me, to support me without diminishing me. So, he said, his eyes searching mine, where do we go from here? I considered the question carefully, weighing all I now knew about him, about his world, about the life we might build together. Forward, I said finally. Together. One day at a time. Relief and joy mingled in his expression. Together, he repeated, sealing the promise with a kiss. 6 months later, I stood in the doorway of Adriano's, our coastal home, watching as he discussed plans with the contractor. The community center in the North End was nearly complete, a project he had thrown himself into with surprising passion once I had encouraged him to reconnect with his architectural roots. Much had changed in those months. I had moved in with him, dividing my time between the coastal house and the city penthouse depending on his business needs. My first collection of reimagined fairy tales had found a publisher, a legitimate one, as Adriano had promised, and early reviews were encouraging. I had met his captains, the men who ran various aspects of his organization. I had attended functions where I was introduced as Adriano's woman, a designation that still made me bristle even as I recognized the protection it afforded me in his world. I had learned to live with the constant security, the awareness of potential threats, the knowledge that the man I loved made decisions daily that existed in moral gray areas I would never fully understand. It wasn't a perfect life. There were arguments, fierce ones, about boundaries and independence, about risks and responsibilities. There were nights I lay awake listening to him take calls in his study, knowing lives hung in the balance of his decisions. There were moments I questioned my own moral compass for loving a man whose power was built partially on violence and fear. But there was love too, deep and unwavering. There was respect, as he supported my writing career without trying to control it. There was partnership, as we navigated the complex reality of our lives together. I was still lost in thought when I felt his arms encircle me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. "What's on your mind, my love?" he asked, pressing a kiss to my temple. "Just thinking about how much has changed," I said, leaning back against his solid warmth. 6 months ago, I was worried about making rent. Now I'm helping design a multi-million-dollar community center. His arms tightened around me. "Do you regret it? Any of it?" I turned in his embrace to face him, taking in the features that had become as familiar as my own. The sharp jawline, the penetrating dark eyes, the mouth that could be cruel in business but was only ever tender with me. "No," I said honestly. "It's not the life I imagined for myself. It's more complicated, more dangerous. But it's also more," I searched for the right word, "more everything," he supplied, understanding as he always did. "Yes," I agreed, "more everything." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box that made my heart skip. "I was going to wait until tonight when Marco is hosting that dinner for us. But I find I can't wait any longer." He opened the box to reveal a ring that took my breath away. An emerald surrounded by diamonds. Elegant, yet understated compared to what he could certainly afford. "Stella Bennett," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You walked into my life like a revelation. You've seen all of me, the darkness and the light, and somehow still chosen to stay. Will you marry me? Be my wife? My partner? My equal in all things?" The sincerity in his eyes brought tears to mine. This was no possessive gesture, no marking of territory. This was a man asking for a commitment of equals, offering his heart with no reservations. "Yes," I said, my voice steady despite the tears. "Yes, I'll marry you." His smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto my finger, then pulled me into a kiss that promised a lifetime of passion, protection, and partnership. Later that evening, as we celebrated our engagement with Marco, Bianca, and a few trusted members of Adriano's inner circle, I caught my reflection in a window. The woman staring back at me so different from the one who had reluctantly attended a charity gala 6 months before. I wore confidence now like a second skin, my posture straight, my gaze direct. I belonged here, not because Adriano had claimed me, but because I had chosen this life with open eyes. "Happy?" Adriano asked, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of champagne. "Very," I said, accepting a glass and clinking it against his. "Though I still can't believe how much has changed since you whispered, 'Let them watch,' in my ear that first night." He smiled, that genuine smile that still transformed his features. "I meant it then, and I mean it now. Let them watch us build something extraordinary together. Let them see what real partnership looks like." I leaned into him, feeling the solid strength of the man who had become my safe harbor in a dangerous world. "To us," I said, raising my glass, "and to the extraordinary life we're building, together." "Together," he echoed, the word a vow more binding than any ceremony could provide. As conversations flowed around us, As Marco told embarrassing stories of Adriano's youth and Bianca teased me about wedding plans, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. This wasn't the life I had planned, but it was the one I had chosen, with all its complications, all its dangers, all its extraordinary intensity. I belonged to Adriano Russo, yes. But more importantly, he belonged to me, the powerful, dangerous, loving man who had seen the strength in me before I recognized it myself. Together we would face whatever came our way, the sunshine and the shadows, the triumphs and the threats, let them watch indeed.